Perfeito.
Dear colleagues, take your seat so we can start soon. If you can be, of course. Not working. Why is it not working? Can you help me? So, my condition every time you have to push it. Then now it's working. I can see. So shall we start? Everybody's here, right? Yes. Isabella, where are you? Isabella. Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, if you don't mind, we will start the afternoon session. And thank you very much for coming back after the lunch and spending some time with us, especially in this hot room. I didn't know actually that it's so hot. So please, I don't know, keep the doors open or take off your shoes or whatever you want to take off. Just feel comfortable because it's very warm. It's really very warm here. Right. So today here in the afternoon session, we are discussing the implementation of the EU Roma Strategic Framework, and we have some excellent speakers with us. And my name is Andór, and I'm working actually for the EU and Norway grants office here in Brussels, the FM office, if you know it better. And we may know each other actually from the European Commission, since I used to work for the Commission for many, many years. Right. Without further ado, I would like to ask colleagues who are joining us online to respond to some questions so we can have some food for thought actually for the discussion, and also we can, let's say, ask our speakers to respond to some of these answers what we are receiving. Can we start the slide? Yes? Okay. So the questions for the online participants. Where do you see the biggest implementation gap in National Roma Strategic Frameworks? And if I understand well, the colleagues, they are putting now the answers actually in the slide, right? Hopefully, yes. On with the questions? I don't see it. Yes. Nobody replied? No. Okay. 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 That's clear. Okay, and that was a very clear answer. The second question is, which factor most limits the implementation at national level?
Okay, that's also very clear.
Oh, that's it? Good job. And question 3 is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you that member states will meet the 2030 Roma framework targets? All right. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Nobody is in category 4 and 5. That's a big sad. Okay.
There are just 3 people.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Okay. So with this answer, I think we can directly go to the panel, and we can ask colleagues actually to reflect also actually on this picture, and also we would have some more targeted questions actually for the participants. Let me introduce the panel. Next to me is Szabó Schmidt, Head of Unit the European Commission, Indigenous Justice and Consumers, responsible for Roma inclusion. Online, we have with us Oana Taba from the Council of Europe, if I understand well. Oana, you are with us? She is probably somewhere online, all right, okay. Then we have also Isabella. Now I have a problem actually. We have doing such a good job, huh? Senior Advocacy Officer from ERGO Network. Lavinia Banu, from coordinator of the RIPEC, right? Okay. And also Helena Shebul from the National Focal Point, Republic of Moldova.
Yes.
Right, Szabó, I would like to ask you to reflect actually directly maybe actually on this slide of points, and also tell us how do you see actually the implementation of the framework, and if I understand well, you are planning or you're preparing your already actually 2026 progress. Where are you now actually, and how do you see the progress report? Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on.
Can you hear me? Okay, I had the impression there's nothing. Okay. So then, thanks, Andór. Good afternoon to everyone. You introduced me already, so I don't need to repeat, but perhaps just also to share for some of you once more that my unit is in general in charge for developing policy and
recording in progress.
Thank you.
That's good. Legal instruments to fight racial discrimination or ethnicity-based discrimination. So the whole work on anti-racism and of course Roma equality is a very strong part of it, but it goes alongside all the legal work. We have the Racial Equality Directive, obviously, but also, and it is important to know, also the Employment Equality Directive in my unit, and what is even more important and new directive to come is the directives on the standards for equality bodies, which I do hope very much that they will bring about a change in reality, because these are the bodies who are established in each and every member state to address patterns of discrimination. So not only to deal with individual complaints, but also to get into dialogue with the authorities in the member state to overcome patterns of discrimination. It's not yet in force in the member states. It has to be transposed only by June next year, but this will be a very important other task on my unit. Now on the strategy, you were asking about that. Let us also just recall that this strategy about which we are now speaking is a new one, and it was meant, of course, to be a much stronger and powerful one than the previous one, which didn't show a lot of success. And I think it's important to recall that it was really a strong novum, as I think, that is now built on 3 pillars. So we are not only speaking about socio-economic inclusion anymore, as we did for 10 years, but now anti-Gypsyism, equality, and also participation are both equally strong pillars of it. And we have also a very clear message to all the member states that we need to work commonly, but in a very differentiated manner. And we have very clear guidances how to differentiate, depending on the situation and the magnitude of the problem. We have now very clear horizontal objectives to fight poverty, equality, and participation, and then the sectoral ones. And what is also very strong novum, that we have targets We have clear targets. We said where we are in terms of discrimination, for instance, or segregation in schools, and where we want to get. This is also a no-go. And we have, of course, also a strong monitoring framework in place. Now, when you ask me just generally where we are and how we assess it, I don't want to repeat what we had in the last report, which was published in 24, because I'm pretty sure you are all aware of it. So it was really a strong message of encouragement towards member states to do more. But from my perspective, I can again reiterate, I was really impressed by the positive uptake by member states at the beginning, that they went along with this new concept to focus also on inequality and participation. Nobody contested it. In the opposite, we got in unanimity a council recommendation which reinforces all these messages. So I think this was already a very good start, because the bulk of the work needs to be done in the member states. It will not be done in Brussels. We can only support and guide, but needs to be done by the member states. So this council recommendation, which is there, which has been put on the table immediately as a response to the Commission's strategic framework, is, I think, a very important one. But of course, we should not just look at the papers, but also on the reality. And we are having, as you know, also with the help of the Fundamental Rights Agency, these regular surveys on the situation, and I'm very much attached to figures, because even though these are at the end just figures, but they tell you a bit about the reality. And there we can see that we are moving, but we are moving far too slow. This is the general message. On some socio-economic indicators, we see some improvement. For instance, the number of Roma people living in poverty went down by 10%, which is, I think, very good. But if I look from where it went down, from 80 to 70, then I'm not really proud of it. That's not something I would like to present as a success story, that 70% of the Roma are in poverty. No, this is really, we are very, very far from where we should be. And what we also see, in particular in relation to anti-Gypsyism, and that leads me to this slide. Again, we had a good uptake by member states, but the reality is exactly the opposite. So I see again that what has been put into place is not sufficient. And again, I refer to our recent survey that we got from FRA. When it comes to the experience of discrimination, which is a good indicator about the situation of anti-Gypsyism, the situation didn't improve it at all. The opposite, it got worse. It got worse. And if we look around or read the newspapers, we see that very bad incidents are immediately triggering anti-Roma sentiments in broad parts of society. So we have an issue where we are very far from having the solution. From the Commission's perspective, I really believe that if we don't manage to get hold of this problem of equality, of fighting anti-Gypsyism, then it will be close to impossible to achieve progress on all these socio-economic indicators. For us, it's really the root cause. So this is my, let's say, mixed response in a nutshell.
Just before we are going to the next speaker, can you just tell us a little bit actually about the 2026 progress reports?
Yeah, it will come. You know that we have a system in place whereby member states are reporting to us. So this reporting has taken place. We are now analyzing that part of the reporting. But we are, of course, also very keen on having let's say, another angle when we are establishing our reports, and the other angle consists of two elements. One is the objective figures, and I'm referring now to this data, but the other is also we have a system in place whereby civil society is reporting independently from the member state authorities how they see the implementation in the specific member states. So what we are now working upon, and that takes a bit of time, that we are analyzing, so to say, these different sources of input, and we would like to come up in the next report, unlike in the previous one, with analytical information on each and every member state, so that it's even more cited to the situation in the given member state. But what I can tell you already now, where we see really huge problems, is that there are still a number of member states, including those who are classified as the ones where special efforts are needed, who still don't have indicators, good targets. And it's awfully difficult to put something in place if you don't even know how you would like to contribute, what you would like to achieve, with the help of the funds in order to be there where the European target is then relying on your national target. So this is a very obvious problem that is there, and I think also well known to many of those who are following that, and we consider that as a very serious issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We will come back to the questions or issues what colleagues raised in the slide about the fighting anti-Gypsyism and some other things. But now I would like to give the floor to Anna, if you are with us, Anna. Yes?
Hi, everyone.
Perfect.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, thank you very much, Anna. So from the Council of Europe perspective, how your monitoring tools and standards complement the EU processes? Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and what are the main challenges you observe?
We at the Council of Europe have multiple mechanisms. Thank you for asking these questions, and also standards that directly or indirectly protect and promote the rights of Roma. We enhanced the work, and we boosted the resources that we dedicated to the topic of Roma inclusion ever since the 2010 Strasbourg Declaration on Roma. And ERGO's invitation that we share our input on achievements, challenges related to this topic comes at the very right time, because we have recently looked at how the Strategic Action Plan of the Council of Europe on Roma and Travellers inclusion from 2025 up to 2020 up to 2025 was implemented. And we have also prepared the next Council of Europe strategy for 2026-2030. And critically looking at our work for the past 6 years, we noted that Council of Europe's monitoring mechanisms, our policy instruments, have been one of the backbones of collective efforts to uphold the human rights in general in Europe, and also the human rights of Roma. And through intergovernmental work, we developed legal standards that have set the tone for important topics, for topics such as hate crime, to hate speech, to equality for Roma and Traveller women and girls, teaching of Roma and Traveller history, and so on. And these achievements are not necessarily abstract, although they might seem so, because they were also visible, and this is something that the evaluation has shown us. They were visible in the strengthening of inclusive education initiatives and creation of programs such as Roma political schools, or in programs that were dedicated and targeted to empowerment of specific groups such as women and youth. From joint programs such as in school with the European Commission, the support that in school has provided for children, for parents, for teachers, to joint program Javstrom that looked at empowerment of Roma women. These initiatives have tried to build bridges between these policies that we created and lived experiences of communities. Whenever we hear about achievements related to Roma inclusion, we automatically also hear about the progress that remains slow. We might be tired of hearing this, indeed, but we must keep being honest about the limited impact. And we always ask ourselves, why is structural change still this slow? And I'm sure that many of us here in the meeting have multiple answers to this from our day-to-day work. But it's of course the very hard to eradicate anti-Gypsyism. It's of course the failure to ensure not only participation but meaningful one, continuous one, Roma participation. And on top of all of this, we also have, we had and we continue to have crises that destabilize, that deepen already existent hate speech, already existent manifestations of anti-Gypsyism. We had COVID-19 crisis, which tested our resilience, and the evaluation looked at this particular thing. But this has also revealed, for instance, that our institution, the Council of Europe, can adapt to make sure that it continues to uphold its core values, even in times of turbulence. The next strategy, 26-2030, to be submitted to the Committee of Ministers for adoption beginning of 2026, is quite clear in its ambition. It aims to continue to affirm identity and dignity, to contribute to strengthening democratic governance through participation of our main group, to empower local communities and to ensure that the policies are also grounded in evidence. We continue to put the center of our vision. We continue to put equality and also the fight against anti-Gypsyism and cross-cutting priorities such as gender equality, youth empowerment, intersectional approaches continue to strengthen this work and ideally to avoid leaving anyone behind. The evaluation has provided us with very valuable guidance because we were in parallel process of also preparing the next strategy. And the evaluation reminded us that criteria such as effectiveness, relevance, coherence are not just some boxes to tick when we do assessments, but they should be principles for guiding action. And among the lessons learned, we reflected on how legal frameworks, for instance, against anti-Gypsyism, okay, they exist in many countries, but they do demand stronger implementation. They must be paired with capacity building, with monitoring, and this should be continuous processes. It's not something that is achieved and then we move on. This needs to be continuous. For instance, another lesson learned concerns groups such as I would call them allies, media, academia, that we should engage ethically, because ultimately we need to embed principles like combating anti-Gypsyism in the public consciousness, and these are the allies that can help us achieve that. And crucially, we must reach the point where the gap is narrower and the gap is ultimately closed between the national and local levels, because most of the times those are the critical parts of the story of Roma inclusion. We must, reinforce governance, funding, technical assistance. All these elements needs to be reinforced so that inclusion is not just, an abstract concept, an abstract policy, but something that communities feel in their day-to-day life, in their lived realities. And this work that we are conducting and that we did not happen in isolation. Our strategy, the draft one, for now it's not adopted, is aligned with broader institutional commitments, such as the new Democratic Pact for Europe in the making of the Council of Europe, the Reykjavik Declaration, and of course the EU Strategic Framework for Equality, Inclusion and Participation. And the joint European Union and Council of Europe programs are another very concrete example of how this coherence works and shows that when institutions align, the communities benefit ultimately. Alignment is not the only element that is needed. Of course, we also our success also depends a lot on political commitment. It's not only about our institutions, but it's about member states in the end, about accountability and how to, again, embed the principle of inclusion across all sectors of levels of governance. I focused my observations on the policy frameworks mostly that guide our work at the Council of Europe in the past 15 years. But this topic is looked, and I think most of us know this, that is looked at from multiple perspectives by various mechanisms and sectors. Yes?
Do you mind? Sorry to interrupt you. Just maybe.
Sorry?
Maybe we can go back to a bit more deep, let's say.
I'm afraid I can't hear you.
Okay. Sorry. No worries.
Can you hear me?
We hear you very well. Now, how much do you hear me?
Oh, now I hear you very well. I thought that you stopped me and I thought you had a question, or
Yes.
I misheard.
Yes. I just wanted to tell you that maybe we can come back to the more discussions actually when we have open the floor. So if you don't mind, we can go ahead actually with some other presentations because we don't have time more actually for this presentation. Okay?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joanna. And let's continue with Isabella. Isabella, so she will present us, if I understand well, your report. That's great. And please just tell us actually that what you define and how you see actually the how much the commitments on paper they already implemented. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I do have a PowerPoint as well, which is just there.
Yeah, it's working now.
It's working,
now.
right?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So let's just put it into presentation mode. Yeah, it will take a bit. But as you already have received it on your tables, and you can also see one of the key leads you to this report. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be presenting here. And it is in the context of where the European Commission has adopted the EU framework in 2020, and we are approaching the midterm review, and we wanted to kind of start ahead and do a survey whereby we would ask our members, but also partners in various countries, both in the EU and the enlargement countries, about their perceptions about the implementation so far of the National Roma Strategic Frameworks, and where they see progress, where they see challenges, where they see some good practices that could be replicated and learned from in the process. I also wanted to add also for our partners in the European Commission that in the beginning of the year, we intend to do a second phase of this midterm review from civil society perspective, and to have like some progress input from our members and partners, so that it's more updated, and hopefully you can also integrate it within your final midterm review. As you mentioned, Sabot, with this new process, you also collect a lot of evidence from civil society, which we believe is important, and so we want to take advantage of that and make sure we also give you a second progress report on the implementation from the side of our members and our partners. And so as you can see, we can go to the first slide. Yes. So here, as I have mentioned, the idea of the report was to really look at civil society perspective across the framework's objectives, and also take advantage, if you can go also to the next slide as well, some of other reports that exist, and create some sort of combined findings on the implementation. And so what we actually measure through this report is the implementation phase, the effectiveness of national coordination in terms of the NRCPs, ministries, municipalities, Roma participation, progress in areas of education, housing, employment, and health, but particularly important, the experiences of discrimination and anti-Gypsyism, but also the gaps between commitment and actual impact. In terms of methodology, and we can move to the next slide, we asked, as I said, members and partners, the countries you can see represented there. I'm not gonna spell all of them. So there are still some member states that are missing. So that's why with the second phase progress report, we hope to be able to reach everybody. So that then the Commission can have a more comprehensive understanding of the implementation, both within the EU member states, but also the enlargement countries. We also looked at it just as a matter of methodology. We also looked at other reports by FRA, which were also mentioned here. Obviously, as baseline, we looked at the framework, we looked at the portfolio of indicators, we also looked at the RCM findings just by comparison. In terms of, we can go to the next slide, the key messages that we can take away. They are not very different from what we have heard in the first panel or what we have already heard here also from Juana. She mentioned the slow implementation. But we also echo what Sabot has also said, that commitments have actually increased amongst most countries. And so we can see at least at the declarative level from the member states and also through the adoption of the national strategies, local action plan, that there is a higher level of commitment from the member states, which is very important to highlight. But yes, at the level of implementation, we see implementation is still quite slow. Some countries start a bit later in the process, some they develop the indicators a bit later, and so on. So the process has been slow. It has been fragmented here and there. It has been inconsistent. And in terms of like the highlights of the feedback that we have received, anti-Gypsyism does remain the strongest barrier across all domains. Also, housing and education show the least measurable progress. And we can also understand specifically when we speak about housing, this is an area where it's much more difficult for member states to achieve progress. So this is really reflected in the answers. The Roma civil society does play a central role or an important role, but funding for them is unstable, and we will see from the report that it's mainly like EU based, which is always very difficult for NGOs. And local implementation has been highlighted as the weakest link overall. We can go on to the next slide, and you can see as a summary also within the report some of the highlights, the laws that or the progress that has been achieved across the various objectives, both within EU and enlargement. So we can see that in terms of combating anti-Gypsyism, progress is, at least from the point of view of the respondents, it's just about 13%. So recognition of anti-Gypsyism did improve, but in terms of legal enforcement, this is still weak. A lot of respondents mentioned that the party bodies are still underfunded, so they cannot do a lot. In terms of reducing poverty, progress is just registered around 25%. When it comes to participation, 35%. A lot of the respondents said consultation does exist, but oftentimes it's just symbolic. It's not really meaningful. They don't see their perspective reflected in like final decisions. When it comes to equal access to quality education, progress has been indicated as up to 18%. We do continue to have segregation and low preschool and secondary completion rates. When it comes to access to employment, 27%. Healthcare, social services, 28%. Again, also as in the first panel, the health mediators have been mentioned a lot. But when it comes to health insurance, across the respondents, it's quite weak in a lot of the member states. When it comes to housing and essential services, 19%. Little progress on desegregation, high rates on inadequate housing. If we move forward with some of the cross-cutting structural challenges that have been identified, we can see that a lot of the respondents actually mentioned the weak capacities of the NRCPs in terms of their mandate, in terms of their funding, in terms of who works in the office. A lot of times, the answers mentioned that there is just 1 or 2 persons that are working in the office, which kind of has a lot of impact on how efficient this office can really be. Limited Roma desegregated data, that's always been an issue with a lot of the member states, and poor use of indicators. Stavros has mentioned that a lot of the countries don't always have a lot of indicators or targets. In the instances where they do have them, you don't see a lot of use or reporting on indicators concretely. Symbolic participation, I have mentioned this before. Local authorities also lack resources, and they don't actually plan according to Roma specific needs. And we can also see short-term projects and which undermine sustainability. As I said, there is most of the funding that comes from the EU. When it comes to anti-Gypsyism, and I just put their objective one because this is how we put it within the report. Obviously, this is just a random order. The findings or the report found that a lot of the respondents within the EU, more than half, so 15%, and 33% in the enlargement countries, not that anti-Gypsyism is recognized in policies, but its impact in terms of how it is being addressed is still being limited. And we see a lot of hate incidents and online hate speech that are still a lot of cases that are rising. In terms of challenges, and I think I mentioned this before, a weak enforcement of anti-discrimination legislation, under-reporting, lack of data, equality bodies, lack from a specific mandate and resources. There are also some good news. I mean, some of the respondents mentioned some good practices. Again, some of it at the more formalistic level. In the case of Portugal and Spain, the fact that they do have national equality plans. In the case more specifically of Lithuania or Greece, that they do have some campaigns in school and media. So you see some of these good practices, you have to take them with some caveat. They're not really deep, but there is some good practices that the respondents chose to mention as positive. When it comes, and we can move now to the poverty and social exclusion objective, overall, 70% of the respondents say that the national strategies include poverty measures. So that's correct, probably even more, all of them, they do include. But then when it comes to the progress, only 25% in the EU and 25% in the enlargement countries of the same observe some progress, and this is as of 2021. In terms of challenges, you can see also here fragmented coordination between ministries, weak link to EU social policy goals, municipality lack administrative capacity, and the enlargement region faces funding barriers, particularly in terms of co-financing. You can also see some good practices there, but again, it's more the formalistic level rather than in real practice or in implementation. We can move on to participation, empowerment, and trust objective in terms of, again, findings. 45% of Roma, of the respondents mentioned that Roma NGOs are actually part or included in national or regional monitoring committees. although specifically some countries might tell you that very few, if at all, are part of monitoring committees. But we can see a general increase from the past years in this respect. You can also see that in terms of reporting discrimination, the respondents actually declared that there is an increase in reporting, which has always been an issue, especially if we look at the Fundamental Rights Agency's report. And here we can see an increase of 68% increase, which is like actually a positive aspect. You can also read some of the good models, but again, it's, well, in Spain, because of the Roma Council that sits at the governmental level, they do have the advantage to be part of legislative and decision-making processes, and this was mentioned as a positive practice. You can read more details, obviously, in the report. We don't have time to actually go through all of the aspects right here, but when it comes to education, to where am I here? To sorry. We have to just move
let's
forward.
move it forward and then we will come.
Yeah, I will
to
just show the
section,
slides
Yeah.
so that we can have an idea. So
Yeah.
if we can go, yes, employment, just have an
That's it.
idea there. We can also move to health to have an idea.
Yeah.
You see 28% and 23% of concrete improvement. So usually across the objectives, the improvement doesn't really go far above 30%, which is actually a concern.
Yeah.
So what works, if we go to the slide, what works across European countries? So these are some of the lessons. Long-term stable programs as opposed to these short-term projects, institutionalized Roma participation with voting rights, integrated approaches combining education, housing, and employment, strong municipal action plans with real budgets, professionalized mediator networks, and we also heard before the example of Belgium for mediation generally, not just for Roma, clear targets and indicators with annual reporting, and the recommendations moving forward for the next phase to strengthen the NRCPs with mandate staffing and cross-ministerial authority, to institutionalize Roma participation in resources and voting rights, combat anti-Gypsyism systematically across policing, education, and the media, to scale the ECEC and enforce desegregation, education, and housing, to invest in stable Roma NGO funding, to use the EU portfolio indicators to track progress annually, and to link progress to the EU semester and enlargement conditionality. So in conclusion, we can see progress that does exist, but it remains wide and structural, or a structural level. Roma civil society remains the engine of accountability. And this is an important moment for achieving the objectives moving forward. So we do have to take accountability and to pause and to look at progress and what needs to be changed. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll be waiting for questions.
You will get a lot of questions. Thank you very much. Because there are some excellent data. Thank you very much for the very detailed presentation. It's really very great. And I think we need to come back to some of the data because it's very interesting. For example, like the education part, as the Fra is saying that there's one particular area where the progress is well monitored in the education and people are not feeling it. So that's very interesting.
We can discuss it.
Yeah, we can discuss it. I'm just talking to the audience a little bit. If you feel bad, if you feel that your blood pressure is going down, just please go ahead, stand up, walk a bit, because it's very warm still here. And I understand actually that you are not feeling good, because I don't feel very bad, to be honest. Okay, so Lavinia, the floor is yours. And I know that the time is very limited and so on. Just please try to keep it at around 10, 12 minutes, if you don't mind. But still, we need actually your presentation about the DPEC index. right?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Andór. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I think you're gonna love it because, in fact, I have only 6 slides, and I was planning to speak around 2-3 minutes per slide. But let's see how that goes in practice. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here today to talk about the RIPE index, we call it. It is actually quite a complex initiative. It is supported by the Council of Europe and implemented by the ERGO Network. And I'm the coordinator of this initiative, which was launched already last year. So last year in 2024, we had the first wave of reporting and drafting comparative analysis report. And this is exactly what I'm going to be addressing today here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the process of last year, so 2024, and also how the entire exercise led to the comparative analysis report. So when it comes to the scope of the initiative, it is meant to put in place a standardized data collection process to facilitate comparison across the member states, but also to enable broader participation of the civil society actors within the reporting exercise. I thought it was very important to mention here or to talk about complementarity with other EU actions, such as Roma civil monitoring. And there is indeed complementarity, and not only that there is complementarity, but it goes even beyond the scope of the Roma civil monitoring, as it covers the member states of the Council of Europe, so it goes beyond the EU member states. But it also follows the structure of the ECRI fact sheets, which is a very complex document in itself. As an empty document, amounts up to about 30 pages, I would say. And it focuses on 8 thematic areas, and we are talking here about the data collection processes within the member states, the status of the national strategies and action plans in the member states, prevention, and when we talk about prevention, we actually talk about awareness raising events, about media engagement, about campaigns, but also empowerment. When we talk about empowerment, we are talking about the empowerment of the local authorities, but also the local civil society within the process of consultation and in influencing the policies when it comes to Roma. It also covers inclusive education, access to housing, access to healthcare, to employment, I think I said, but also combating hate speech and hate crime. There are 2 additional areas that were covered by this report. And I'm talking here about the history of the Roma Holocaust and the recognition of the Roma Holocaust. But also there was a specific chapter on Roma women and girls. And because I realized that I didn't cover this in my main findings, which is going to follow a bit later, I do want to take the time and point out that one of the weakest areas across all these domains, it is actually the measures targeting Roma women and girls. And I'm talking here about the scattered data. We don't even have specific data or specific significant measures targeting Roma women and girls. The target countries, I think we can go back a slide because I'm still at the context, the first one, because the target countries where I can just outline this. The target countries are for 2024 are Albania, Bulgaria, Czechia, Germany, Greece, Italy, North Macedonia, Romania, Slovakia, and Spain. It is important to mention that this year, so for 2025, we are already at the implementation of the second stage of the project. So I'm going to be talking later on about the countries that are covered within this second stage. And I think now we can go to the second slide, which is again context and methodology. I want to explain here what were the methods used for the methodology. One of the biggest contributions to this initiative was actually the contribution of the civil society organizations involved in this process. Involved in these organizations, ERGO published last year an open call in order to select national Roma focal points based on their experiences, but also based on their familiarity with such initiatives. Immediately after the selection, we organized an induction seminar with these national Roma focal points in order to explain a little bit the context, but also to really explain the structure of the ECRI fact sheets that we used for the purpose of this exercise. Yes, and after that, they had around 2 months in order to produce the questionnaire. What is very important is that in parallel with this contribution by the civil society, my role specifically was also to produce country fact sheets, I will call them. But what I used as an addition to the contribution from the civil society, which was mostly on the basis of their experience and their involvement in the assessment of the strategies, I actually provided an analysis of all the tools, the documents, public documents, hence so such as European Commission reports. Back in 2024, we had just had the Commission report for 2024. I also used the FRA reports. I also used all the monitoring reports and activity reports of the Council of Europe monitoring bodies, but also other civil society reports in order to clarify in case there were bias between my conclusions and the conclusions of the that we received from the civil society organizations or the National Roma focal points. I wanted also to mention that there was an addition that we added to the updated ECRI fact sheets. We had this in mind because I think the long-term goal of this initiative is to really come up with a systematic exercise and an index of the reporting for the Roma civil society. And we were already brainstorming at that stage how we could actually illustrate or structure the information from the civil society in such a way that it's going to easily be able to contribute and influence the Roma policies. For this purpose, we came up with this very, I would say, minimal alteration of the ECRI fact sheet. So we added this pattern of yes, no, other type of question, which was also color coded. And you can see it in my presentation, but I cannot see it here on my page. Which we thought at one point that would help us to create a form of illustration for all the input across the member states. Then I also have added here the validation with the Council of Europe monitoring bodies. And this was again something that I ensured within the comparative analysis report, in the sense that I went to the latest monitoring reports of the Council of Europe, we practically highlighted the main issues that were addressed within their monitoring reports, and we tried within our assessment reports to provide an answer or an update to those specific issues. When it comes to key challenges, or I wouldn't even call it key challenges, I would call them limitations. Last year, it was the first year when we started working on this exercise. We didn't realize at that stage that there might be differences in the quality of the questionnaires that we received from the National Roma focal points. So what we did this year in order to address this, we decided to provide immediate feedback to the questionnaire in such a way that we would ensure equal basis of quality throughout the entire set of questionnaire across the member states. And I'm just going to move to the third slide. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to tackle all these findings that I have here, but I wanted to illustrate these are not the general main findings. I was going here a little bit into detail so that you see how does a section of the report looks like, and it's just a partial section of the report, so that you see how we actually presented the results, comparative results across the member states. And the first question that we had here was the existence of the comprehensive national strategy in terms of efficiency and also the actual existence of the strategy. And here, all the member states, all the national Roma points actually reported that such a document exists. You might wonder why after so many years we still continue with this question, because they were already adopted back in 2020, 2021. But I consider it to be of relevance because not all the member states have adopted strategies that are valid up until 2030. So some of the member states are still updating or extending, if I can call it like this, the strategies. Setting up indicators, baselines, figures, and here you have 3 forms of assessing. And I'm not going to go into details because I think it's very, very clear, highlighted on the slides. And then when it comes to the process of consultation, it is very important that I mention here that we are talking about the process of consultation that was carried out at the time of drafting the strategies. Yes. There we have had member states that positively assessed the process, and we had clear indication of that from the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Albania. That we also had national Roma focal points that concluded that there was a need for a better reach out to the local and regional level. And yeah, I think I just invented a country. Turkey doesn't exist, but it is actually Romania. So it's a typo. And then we also had unstructured consultation by the NRCP, but balanced with informal consultation mechanisms, such as Germany. And then in Bulgaria, where there were a few hiccups at the beginning of the process, but then there was a compromise that was reached with the authorities in order to have some consensus over the strategy. And now I'm just going to move on to the fourth slide, to the next slide. And I think I'm just going to speak a bit longer on this one, and then if I still have time, I will just cover immediately the...
It's a difficult question that you have time or not. Yes.
Because I don't know how to do that. That's why I was trying to mediate here with Andór. So general main findings, and we are talking here about persistent gaps in data collection despite guidance. And across all the member states, you can see that there are differences. There is some very slow progress when it comes to certain member states, and here I would rather refer to the member states that somehow engage the National Statistics Center within the process of reporting. But as a main narrative that is being used by most of the member states, did someone say stop? So the main narrative used by the member states in not engaging in this type of processes is the fact that it is forbidden in the national legislation. However, I came across a very interesting report which is published on the website of DG Justice. It is a report that was produced back in 2017. within the context of the project, which had the scope to look at the legislation within the member states when it comes to data collection, but also the actual practices that are conducted by the member states. And the conclusion of this report is that we do have around 3 member states, I'm not going to name them, where they do have specifically the provision that the data collection on any criteria is forbidden. And for most of the member states, it is a form of interpretation of the legislation. The main conclusion of this report is that there are loopholes in the legislation where all the member states could carry out data collection processes on any criteria. One of the conclusions of our report is also the fact that, in fact, the assistance provided by the institutions to the member states shows them that they can easily make use of the proxies in order to measure the impact of the measures across the member states. When it comes to the national Roma integration strategy, so I think I covered it before, uneven quality, varying ambition, and I think I'm just going to address education and housing in one go. And I think the most important trends here, or the main conclusion I would say of the report, is that even though these are structural challenges across the member states, the main resort of the member states to tackle these issues is still the means of small-scale projects. And this is an indication already that it is not going to work. It is also one of the conclusions of the FRA report that was published this year in the platform, which shows already that in education and housing, the challenges are still persistent. When it comes to employment and healthcare, I think my conclusions are similar to what Isabella presented, so I'm not going to go into details there. I will just go to the next slide, and it's the 5th one, and the conclusions and follow-up. I think I'm also going to skip this one. I'm just going to go to the last slide, and here I just wanted to give you already an idea of what's going to happen next when it comes to this project of ours, Index. And we are now at the stage of producing a second analysis report in order to cover another round of 10 countries, such as Croatia, France, Hungary, Ireland, the Republic of Moldova, Montenegro, Poland, Serbia, Turkey, and Ukraine. Immediately after this, and it's still going to be produced this year, we're going to have a full merged report to cover the trends in the 20 countries that were so far covered by the initiative. We will have a more extensive presentation that is planned for next year during the Roma Week, and I think I'm just going to stop here. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lavinia. And sorry for pushing you actually. We need to give time actually for the audience to ask questions, because I think you and Isabella, you presented really lots of data, lots of conclusions, which should be a little bit more discussed, so we should process all of this information. But before that, and I'm really very sorry that the time is really very, very limited now, because really we need to open the discussion. But still, you have 10 minutes. Please go ahead, and we are absolutely happy to listen to you, because you are giving us actually a new perspective of the enlargement countries. So please go ahead.
Dear colleagues, I'm pleased to be here to share with you the national perspective of Moldova as an EU enlargement country regarding the progress that we have made and the lesson we have learned in implementing Roma inclusion strategy, as well as the importance of cooperation with European partners. Can we have the presentation here? So, in Moldova, we have a number of more than now 9,000 of Roma. At least that is showing in the last report of National Bureau of Statistics 2024. The number is very under question because Roma civil society have another number which it showed that in Moldova we have at least more than 150,000 Roma. Also, we have a number from the European Commission that shows that in Moldova we have more than 30,000 Roma. So the number is very big difference between what shows these three sources. So, national context. Moldova has been implementing national Roma inclusion policies for more than a decade. These create both, in one hand, opportunities, in other hand, pressure. So, to align national legislation, anti-discrimination mechanism, health, education, housing, employment policies with EU standard. This is actually the first, let's say, pressure that we put, especially now when Moldova has become a candidate for EU. At the same time, Roma community face deep socioeconomic marginalization, limited and unequal access to housing, healthcare, education, documents, persistent discrimination and exclusion. And this shows all the reports that we have made, alternative reports that we have made for European institution and Commission. Moldova as an enlargement pre-accession process pushed the government to adopt stronger inclusion targets, but implementation still require capacity, long-term budgeting, and accountability. So we have some progress. Despite challenges, we have seen measurable improvements. So we have strong institutional frameworks, adoption of national program for Roma inclusion, and the program for Roma mediators. We establish of coordinating units, Roma contact points, and inter-minister working group with the Roma civil society presence. More systematic monitoring that align with EU indicators, and increase access to the services. We strengthen access to health and vaccination outreach, better social protection measures for local and refugee Roma where it is relevant. And another progress is that Moldova government have a scholarship program for Roma children that are in high school and university level that launched in 2023 and start with 49 children. In 2024, we had 94 children that benefit from this scholarship. And this year, we have 110 children together with students. We have some key lessons learned that was found in this questionnaire that was done in RIP project. The implementation matter, not more than strategy design. What I was thinking that actually we have very good strategies, programs, but the implementation still very low. Strategies are often ambition, but the impacts depend on the budgeting, coordination between ministries, and political will. Participation must be meaningful, not symbolic. Roma organizations, especially representing women, children, and youth, Roma with disability, need sustainability funds, access, and motivation to participate in the decision-making process, continuous involvement, not only consultation. And actually, these fields didn't come in our national program. Mediators are working, but they must evolve. Roma mediators have improved access to education for Roma kids, health and social service, but they need more formal recognition, trainings, and career pathways. Anti-discrimination must be mainstreamed. Inclusion cannot succeed without addressing racism, anti-Gypsyism, and bias within public institutions. In Moldova, we don't have yet recognized the anti-Gypsyism phenomenon. Local implementation is crucial. Municipalities often say, we are lack of resources when we are saying about some activities for Roma. So this decentralized budgeting, local partnership, and community needs assessment to improve effectiveness. So of course, we need cooperation. The enlargement process creates a strong EU anchor for reforms. Cooperation with European institutions, organizations, and other partners can contribute to several ways. Technical assistance from European Commission, FRA, COA, OCA, ODIHR, and UN agencies support reforms of policies and data systems. EU-funded programs, EPA, Erasmus, Roma Act, Roma enable large-scale projects, Moderator program, community development, and capacity building of Roma NGOs. Peer learning and regional exchange help countries to learn from each other's model, school desegregation, health, housing, legal empowerment, education, and not least anti-Gypsyism framework. Monitoring mechanisms linked to access negotiation keep Roma inclusion on the political agenda. This cooperation is essential in increasing transparency, strengthening and advocacy for Roma rights, pushing forward reforms that might otherwise be delayed. And in conclusion, the experience of an enlargement country shows that Roma inclusion is both a national responsibility and a shared European priority. While we have made some progress, the lesson learned remind us that inclusion requires, first of all, trust, sustained political commitment, meaningful Roma participation, partnership with European institutions and the local, consistent implementation of national and local level. So the synergy between institution and Roma civil society can continue to build systematic and ensure Roma community, women, men, kids, youth, elderly to benefit equality from development and democracy reform. Of course, this is very general overview about the situation and about this questionnaire that was done. Hopefully in the report that will be made by our colleagues, you'll see more details with more data that we provided in this exercise. This is good practice for enlargement country because we can take some experience from other EU countries that already stepped from this exercise as we are now, Moldova, and why not to have as a pillow the European frameworks that include Roma community and can improve Roma lives.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. And now we can open the floor, and maybe we can first start with Anna because we didn't have time to finish the presentation, and maybe she can give us a little bit of thoughts and ideas actually for the discussion as well. Because we heard a lot actually about the implementation issues as it is slow, and even as Isabella mentioned, actually, let's say the rate of progress is not going beyond 30-35%, if I remember well. Right. So, Anna, if you are still with us, maybe we can give you the floor. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, I couldn't hear the question from the moderator. Apologies. It's very hard to understand what is being discussed. The sound is not very good. Could you please repeat?
Sure. So, thank you, Anna. So what I just said that maybe you can continue actually or finish your presentation. Just I just mentioned that actually that several presenters they mentioned actually that the progress is very slow, and even actually in whatever categories we are not going beyond 30% progress rate. So actually coming back to you, can you just give us a little bit of ideas, thoughts actually, how do you see this question from your point of view, from the monitoring point of view, and then we can continue the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. There are several monitoring bodies, and this is the part of the presentation where I didn't manage to finish, that look at how inclusion is being achieved, but they are doing it from various angles in order to ensure there is no overlap, but reinforcement of how we look at the topic. But what all these monitoring bodies have in common is that they perceive challenges in the areas that both Isabella and Lavinia have noted in their presentation. And I will just look at 2 or 3 examples of this. One is the taking into account the diversity within the Roma communication, within the Roma population in respect to women, to youth, to LGBTI, and addressing intersection level. On this, I want to recall that the Committee of Ministers has adopted extensive guidance on equality for Roma and Travellers women and girls in its recommendation of 2024. Second of all, I would say, and this is reflected in ERGO reports, also in the Advisory Committee on the Framework Convention for Protection of National Minorities, and in many member states, there stronger measures are still needed to counter manifestations of anti-Gypsyism and its effects. While we noted that there are several states that have legal provisions in place that can be used to sanction anti-Gypsyism, either it's prohibited as such, as a specific phenomenon, either by general legislation that covers hate speech, hate crime, and so on. But there are still various issues with this when it comes to application in practice, because even in the very few countries that do recognize anti-Gypsyism in legislation specifically, there is no analysis of how this is being applied, or whether if this is foreseen by the criminal law, it is not analyzed whether there are sanctions actually, whether there are investigations conducted in respect to manifestations of anti-Gypsyism. So the implementation part is really fragmented, and we still need to see assessments on this. And I would also want to highlight just one more point that I find very important, that apart from enacting legislation, it is of utmost importance that society internalizes the values like diversity, inclusion, non-discrimination, and governments must start to speak a bit more to the.
You have the floor actually to ask questions, and please use this opportunity to support us, because then he can answer, or he should answer to the question. So please go ahead. I see Susanna. Please try to reflect also on the presentations, because we had we had all very good presentations, but we had 2 very important reports. That's what I wanted to say, with data. And I think it would be important actually that we are reflecting also on data. But Susanna, please go ahead. Do you have microphone, or you don't have?
I don't think I will speak. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your presentations. I would like to ask one thing, because I was also part of the Roma Civil Monitor consortium, and we were monitoring the implementation, and was mentioned here many times about the implementation of the strategic plans or of the strategic framework. And I would like to ask one thing, because we found out that really the implementation during the 4 years, 2 years, is very slow. And we know that we are speaking about actions or interventions or programs or policies that they really need to take time. Maybe it's a question now, I'm questioning for you and for Mr. Schmidt also, that maybe if the European Commission was not thinking about that, to change the period about the monitoring of implementation, because on one side it's fine if we monitoring if there is something, some action regarding to implementation, but on the other side, when we found out that after 2 years was done nothing, like in many cases this is the reality, then maybe it's really becoming a little bit frustrating for all of the actors that are involved in this process. So my question is that if you are not thinking about it, maybe not to monitor it internally like each year, but but in Slovakia it's each year, for example, but and make it like, yes, for European Commission it's 2 years, but I'm in these processes, and maybe to make it the monitoring period, like to make it longer, because really some policies they take time to prepare.
Thank you, Sudha. Thank you. Is there any other questions? So maybe we can collect some questions and then ask the speakers to reflect. Yes, please.
Yes, I think that I can say. Once an educator, always an educator. The voice is quite.
Please introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Angeliki Giannakopoulou. I come from the European Association for the Education of Adults. So on that, what I wanted to ask the whole panel, because when discussing adults, when discussing education, we tend to forget that adult education is a means to not only educate and train the people from the marginalized communities themselves, but to also create common ground with other areas and with other communities around them. And this is the essential link that we have in adult education with social justice. And talking about segregation and the fact that we have segregated schools that diminish actual educational capacity, in adult education, this is something that we fight for, programs that support linking all parts of society to not further segregate the needs of adult learners, of adult Roma people included. So for that, what I would like to see and what I would like to ask you is, how do you see this synergy, this kind of common ground and common work regarding, yes, being flexible and tailoring to the needs of the Roma people, but also educating and training the rest of the society, because anti-Gypsyism is not a problem of the Roma people. This is a problem of the rest of the society.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Immediate ones? Yes.
Hi, I'm Esmeralda. Hi.
And please introduce yourself as well.
Yes, I'm Esmeralda from the Dutch Association, Nederlandse Roma Vereniging. My English is not very well, but I'm working on it.
No.
So you are going to translate for me what I want to say to you. Okay. The question, that's okay.
So regarding the national Roma contact points,
Yes.
okay. So regarding the national Roma contact points, is an experience, well, in the Netherlands, that there is no participation, no inclusion of Roma themselves. So how could we relate to this, or how could we improve this, that the Roma are being included within the national Roma contact points as we speak? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can start the. András, you want to say something? You have to explain why.
It does, but it doesn't.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Depends on the person.
Connect to the Dutch colleagues.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have more contact point, are problematic in many countries, especially in Hungary. I don't think Roma contact point is more like than a gatekeeping office. They are gatekeeping, they are not initiating cooperation and dialogue, they are more like trying to isolate from the real world. And the other question when it comes to implementation, national implementation, I just want to raise the attention to the Hungarian example. What kind of reality we are talking about when a state is faking data? So in Hungary, the statistical office faked the data of people living under poverty, in poverty. Half of the number was reported. The reality, statistical professionals showed it to the public, and it took almost a year that they corrected it. Of course, it's a political thing, but they are trying to hide the reality from the citizens and from the international arena. Also, just for you to know that there are some independent organizations. Ombudsman office is not so independent, though the vice president of the Ombudsman office is kind of responsible for the minorities. On the last day in office, she realized the report on the practice of the church French school, how they are segregating Roma kids in school, what their role it is in this phenomenon. And there was an earlier report also by this vice ombudsman on the, there is a new law introduced in the country which is helping municipalities to preserve the identity of the settlement, which is preventing poor people who they define that they can't move in the settlement. Both reports vanished from Ombudsman office. So we can't talk about reality when the state is just showing a picture and not the reality, and prevent the public to see the reality. So how we measure at European level where we are at, what we have achieved, with the state who is providing data and facts, they are lying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, can we start with you, Andór? I'd like to ask you to respond in a very short way so we can use some other rounds of questions.
I was very short at the beginning, so
Yes.
please don't.
No, you did very well.
But I would like to briefly start with the colleague from the adult education to very firmly provide my full agreement with what you said when speaking about combating anti-Gypsyism. The primary work doesn't need to go towards those who are affected by anti-Gypsyism, but the rest of the society, which is the majority. It's absolutely clear, and that is exactly the point where we still see a lot of need to be done. It's not enough to acknowledge that we have anti-Gypsyism, but also to find the right tools that also society at large has a good understanding how poisonous it is for our societal well-being and for our future and for everything. So on that, we fully agree. But Susanna spoke about implementation of the strategic frameworks in the member states. And we did last week actually something very unusual in the European Commission. We dedicated a whole morning of our commissioner in charge for equality to discuss exactly implementation. So we had a so-called implementation dialogue with not many people, but a very, let's say, broad variety of people. Those who work really in enterprises and of course also activists, researchers. So it was a very interesting exchange, and what came back, and there will be of course a report and everything, but 2 points which fit very well to also what you raised here. One is the need of meaningful participation also in the sense of monitoring. I think it's very clear to all of us that unlike in Moldova, we do have a lot of money. We have a lot of possibilities to support all these strategies here in the European Union, but still the progress is not there. So it's really amazing. Money is there, but we are still discussing the topics, and this is very much due to the lack of meaningful participation, which helps monitoring. So one of the conclusions was, of course, the union also has to monitor at its level, but we have to bring it down also to the level of localities, municipalities, where the actual change has to happen. And I think that's why, I mean, we don't think that we already loosened our formalistic monitoring from previously 1 year to now 2 yearly. I think that's the good direction. We still need some monitoring, but what is really missing is at the local level. Speaking also about funds, I think it's very important, and that was also a very important message in this implementation dialogue, that of course we will need to make sure that the future structural funds, I'm talking about this MFF 2028 and beyond, also makes it, with all its flexibility, sure that the investment into equality of Roma is maintained and is put forward. So this is also an important message to all of you. It's not only the Commission, but since the negotiations are now ongoing between Parliament and Council, I think there's a very important role for civil society organizations also to make sure that even in this new concept, there is a specific mentioning, which we have proposed in our draft legislation, to Roma and people with disability, but that this is maintained. And I would also like to use again this opportunity to not underestimate the linkage between the so-called European semester, which is about economic competitiveness, and the future funding. So all the funds will be quite strongly linked to what has been identified in the individual member states as a shortcoming in terms of the European semester. And then last but not least, on the NRCPs, I agree, we have very different types of NRCPs. Some are very well staffed and very performant. Others are really suffering with staff, and this was also mentioned in your report. I find it also very important, of course, and we do that ourselves in the European Commission, to have also ethnic Roma among the staff, so that things do not need to be explained by outsider, and also this principle, nothing for Roma without Roma. But I'm just adding, and that is also a reaction of the last intervention, this in itself will not necessarily make a NRCP performing strongly vis-à-vis the whole society. And then we come back again to the meaningful participation. And that's a two-sided exercise. You need to push, we need to push, but of course also the NRCP must be very open to be in a participatory process.
Can we, Isabella, maybe you can tell us a little bit more actually about the implementation angle, because I think that many colleagues, they are raising this question actually, that we are failing more in the implementation. What do you think about that, looking at your report?
Right, I thought I was going to also address some of the...
No, address whatever you want, I'm just...
Yeah. No, let me just probably link them as well, because like to the question also when it comes to like the monitoring for Shoshana, because what we want is not less, but more monitoring. So the fact that you have a country such as Slovakia that wants to focus on that regularly, it's exactly what we are requesting all member states to do, ongoing monitoring. The fact that they need to report back to the Commission on a 2-yearly basis, it's all right, because that gives the opportunity of member states to actually take the polls on how the things are being implemented, both at local and national level, and not to mention the fact that in a lot of our countries there are a lot of political changes that are happening, and so sometimes they have to stop, assess what has happened. If there is a new government coming, sometimes they have to restart, so I think that that's not a downsizing, that's not a problem. It's just a matter of resources and how it is done. To the more general question of implementation, and it links also to what Juana has mentioned, what the report mentioned, that it's very slow. It's a lot to do with the setup of governments, of the governance, if you want, at national and local level. And in a lot of the cases, it's nothing to do with Roma political will or lack of it, but it's more to do with the resources that are at play to implement certain strategies. And so that's why we come back again to the political will that we see exercised in the fact that the member states have adopted all of these tools, the national strategy, the local strategy, but we simply don't have budgets, right? So we always come back to the issue of funding and how can you actually make sure that we implement certain measures if we don't actually have the budget. So that remains. It's something that we have seen in the survey as well, the lack of funding. And it's true that leads me to what Szabolcs has mentioned, that the next programming period, it's really important. The fact that we have had in this programming period the conditionality on Roma issues was really important, but even there we see that a lot of the member states are still failing to allocate important amounts of funding for particular measures. So the question of implementation is so big, Andór, that it's really difficult to give you a proper answer, but I would say that it has to do, again, with the way the local and national governance is set up, and also with the fact that you don't have a lot of times the expertise that is related to Roma issues, whether it's Roma expertise or whether it's from the people with Roma background or just people that have worked on Roma issues. That says a lot. Where you actually have it in the administrations where Roma are actually hired, both the local and national level, you see that there is a bit more progress, or at least the understanding is there. And where you don't have it, you actually have less. For instance, you will see a country such as Estonia, which has also answered the questionnaire, because you don't have Roma representation at the institutional level. You also the Roma population in Estonia, it's much smaller. You will see that Estonia is one of the countries that doesn't have a national Roma strategy. It has only 2 indicators in the big strategy of Estonia when it comes to social inclusion integration, 1 indicator on education and 1 indicator on employment, right? That says a lot. Then we take a country such as Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Greece, the Czech Republic, because you have a bigger Roma population, because you have much more representation, you have much more expertise on Roma issues, you will see there are more measures, you will see there are more projects, you will see there is more mobilization. So these things are also, have a lot to say with the efficiency of the implementation.
Thank you very much. Lavinia, you want to also add something to this? Yeah, please go ahead.
There was a particular question too, actually, that I wanted to address. And I'm talking here about the adult education issue and how this should be implemented in synergies with other communities, but also with other areas of implementation. And I think it's very important to note that from the very beginning, the framework has never had an explicit character. So all the measures that targeted Roma could also be applied to other communities that lived in similar conditions. Then the new framework talked about diversity of the group, but also diversity of the measure. And I think what is very important to note that in most of the cases, we tend sometimes to forget that when we talk about the measures on Roma, a very important aspect is what they are leading to. the efficiency of the measures, whether they are creating the structural change in the lives of the Roma people. So it's beyond our reporting exercise, it's actually the quality of the Roma people that these measures should be generating. And then the second issue that I wanted to address is the capacity of the National Roma Contact Point. And because I was engaged in these exercises across 20 countries, I think I can tell you that I can see the tendency for the Western Central countries where you have national Roma contact points that do not invest the same effort as in the countries with a larger Roma population in providing an inclusive process of consultation. So in some of the member states, they consider that it's enough that they created a little bit of consultation at the beginning when they drafted the strategy, but then that kind of disappeared across the years. And of course, you're going to have civil society who are going to vocalize it, but then again, they don't see it as a very necessary task. They do have the means to enable it. There is funding provided by the Commission specifically for that. There is willingness from the civil society to better engage in inclusive processes. However, I think it is also a bit of a structural issue and an issue of mentality when it comes to Western countries versus Eastern countries and Central countries. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much. And maybe you can give the floor to microphone to Elena. If you want to complement actually this discussion from your point of view, because no development was mentioned, and I think it's quite important that we understand actually how do you see this implementation angle in the enlargement process.
So from our experience in Moldova as an enlargement country, we see that it's a gap between realizing implementation of the framework, strategy, program, whatever it's the name of it, because we don't have funds for actions. So this is actually the main problem that when we're talking about implementation, and the responsible institution cannot do the activities because she's covering like we would love to, but we don't have money for these activities. So of course it's a big gap between this strategy and institution and implementation. So sometimes we're thinking, why we need this Roma strategy? Why? Just for tick? To put a nice tick that is done and to have this good report for at the European level that we done something for Roma in Moldova? No, we don't need that. So, or we put this strategy aligned with budget, with responsible institution, very clear what is responsibility of civil society and how we can synergy our collaboration. Otherwise, I will take responsibility to say that enough is enough. I mean, we don't need this strategy just for tick. Yeah, and you say, Mr. Schmidt, yeah, that Moldova have money. Ah, you. Okay. Moldova to implement this. So to implement this strategy, yeah. So we need aligners, and we need somebody to make a green way and to teach from your EU experience, Professor. Lesson learned
from the EU.
Yes.
Not just to, because I think it's really an extremely important point and nothing to do with Moldova, but we see here in the European Union, we have through the structural funds since 20 years, huge amounts of money which could be used and which are even earmarked for Roma inclusion projects. We have it here. It's available, but at the same time, we see that despite all the strategies, beside all these linkages, things are not happening as they should happen, because there's local resistance, because there's sometimes even misuse of funds, because there's sometimes even a choice to rather do nothing than to invest into desegregation, for instance. And that's why I'm saying it's not enough to have money. What is even more important, to have structures in place which allow for a meaningful, real participation, which is more than just sitting in a monitoring committee, but which really helps that those who are most affected, and these are representatives of the Roma community, even if there's little amount, but that they are involved in the decision-making from the very beginning, and that it doesn't remain just a theoretical option. But that is important. That is my point, to have the real participation throughout the process, and also in the monitoring and the checking what is done. This cannot be done from Brussels or from Chisinau. That has to be done in the place where the money is then to be spent. Yeah?
Thank you very much. I just would like to turn to Oana if she is still with us. Oana, do you hear us? All right, okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, good. Oana, I just would like to come back to the question about the anti-gypsies, because we've seen it actually in the slide at the beginning, that people, they are very much looking at this anti-gypsies as one of the most important areas actually about the implementation. You, as representing a human rights organization, what do you think about that? What can be done better in the future?
Thanks for the question. I actually want to link this reply to your question to the discussion of meaningful participation, because I think that there has been a bit of a decline in the past years of civil society organizations focusing more on how policies are being implemented, which is very good. And I think we have some progress in how institutions, even national institutions, consult Roma civil society organizations when it comes to the implementation of such policies. But I see a decline when it comes to looking, monitoring how human rights in general are being respected. And I see a decline in what type of activities. And it comes back again to the question of funding. And I strongly believe that anti-Gypsyism can only be countered with strong organizations that actually document human rights violation from that perspective, not only from the perspective of policy implementation. And I also strongly believe that strong democracies are comfortable enough to fund watchdog initiatives. So we're not having reluctance to fund, strategic litigation and so on and so forth. Because this also tells us a lot about the discrepancy between the national and the local level. At national level, you have all these policies. Okay, they have this deficiency and that gap, and this can be improved for the next 2 years. States are working to include better targets and so on and so forth. But when it comes to local level, you still have human rights violations occurring on a daily basis that are not properly documented, are not properly reported, are not properly sanctioned. And this speaks about anti-Gypsyism and how it remains, unpunished and unsanctioned.
Thank you very much, Oana. And just because we have very limited time now, and I don't know how to work with this microphone, I don't know how to work with that. So, Szabolcs has to leave, but before he is leaving, I'd like to completely abuse my role here. So there are two important questions which might be discussed in the future a little bit more. And in the ERGO report, I'm just reading that basically Roma inclusion is not linked to the general anti-poverty strategies, anti-poverty actions in many countries. Just a few countries, they made this kind of integration of the Roma strategies actually in the anti-poverty measures. How do you see this question? And the other one is that we have Jana with us, and I think there is one particular question which sometimes missed, or sometimes we are not discussing properly, the high share of Roma children in residential institutions across all countries, what we are seeing here. So we are discussing education always, very well, but this particular question is somehow missing from our discussion. So Jana, if you want to contribute to this discussion, please feel free, about the institutionalization of Roma children across all Central and Eastern European countries. But first of all, Szabolcs, I'd like to ask you, how do you see this question about the integration of Roma strategies in the general anti-poverty measures or in the mainstreaming programs?
On that, I think we should be very clear. If anti-poverty strategy at whatever level is totally blind on the fact, and that's a fact, that there is a racialization angle, then there is a shortcoming. I think this can be responded in that very straightforward manner. There is a correlation, and if you look, and that's why the equality data are so important, to understand that poverty is not just an abstract phenomenon, it is linked to certain circumstances. And people who are racialized, and here in Europe it's first and foremost, but not exclusively, Roma, they are the ones who are in high percentage in poverty, but then also if you look into all the other elements when it comes also institutionalization of children. So my response to that is very clear, and the Commission is coming up also with an anti-poverty strategy.
Exactly.
So I do trust that the message from the Commission as a whole will reconfirm what I just said. We will, of course, have to see. Speaking about upcoming documents, I think it's also very important to be aware that we are now coming up with an anti-racism strategy. So that's not about Roma specifically, but of course that addresses also anti-Gypsyism, and in particular, and that's why it is relevant, and that is new, and in addition to the Roma Strategic Framework, it will also speak about structural racism. These patterns of racism, that it's not just interpersonal incidents, but this whole societal understanding. And that's why also the use of funds is so important. Of course, sometimes we need targeted investments into situations where only Roma, but the investment has to be done for a whole municipality, locality, to work with all of us and not just to a group which is affected. This is in a nutshell. I had foreseen 2 hours, and I stayed with you 2 hours, but I have to go to another appointment. So really,
thank you very much. Thank you very much for your active participation. And if you still have 5 minutes of patience, maybe we can do another round of Slido. I'm looking at Isabella. Sure? Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay, so colleagues who are still with us online, dozens of them. Hopefully. Yeah. Okay, so guys, please answer to the question, what is the one change that would make the EU Roma framework more effective in practice?
Change that would make the Roma
Framework more effective in practice. That was your question.
Yes.
You drafted it, so just
You answered
complain.
it.
Just complain. Okay, so is it working or not?
Yeah, let's see if people answer.
Yeah, people are typing. Okay, good. Just give us 20 seconds. Okay, just let's look at this, the responses here. Aha. Okay. Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. We did not have the chance to discuss actually the earmarked EU funding for Roma inclusion, which is an absolutely critical question, because now, as Szabolcs mentioned, the negotiation between the Parliament, the Council, and the Commission basically launched. And as you know very well, in the new financial regulations, actually, there is no thematic enabling condition on Roma, on disability, or whatever else, transport, nothing, all disappeared. So the question is, how much we can go in that way actually in the future, how much the negotiations will pick up actually this question in the upcoming months. All right, okay, thank you very much. And the last question is, and I'm giving you the floor, I promise. The last question is, what should the European Commission prioritize in the 26 progress report to increase accountability. Okay, so the participation is the biggest, right? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. So the participation. And one more thing which I bless you all. And one more thing which I would like to abuse my position here. When we are discussing actually the participation, capacity building, please don't forget the Norway grants are absolutely available for that. And with some of you, we are discussing actually the new upcoming civil society fund proposals on the Norway grants. These are all available actually for this kind of strengthening the participation and capacity. And the floor is yours.
I don't need the microphone.
That's clear.
It's not working. Just short. Maybe my colleagues will say that I'm crazy, but the idea is like, I'm in the Roma movement more than 25 years. I was lucky to participate from the beginning till today, and I am still here and I listen the same things, you know, how can we do how the... I want to continue with your question. Why we need a special, I don't know, framework for Roma in each country, in the context that all the Roma in each country were citizens, yes? And I'm not a poor person. So if you look on the National Strategy for Roma for Romania, and you read all the measures, they are related with poor people. I'm not poor. I pay my taxes. I'm a good citizen. I'm not a stealer and I don't know what kind of more beggars. The idea is we have to change a little bit the paradigm about what is mean, you know, the policies for Roma. What we need, most of us, we need access to different services. The access is related with anti-Gypsyism and anti-Roma, how you say, you know, attitude. We have to have a framework on this. At the same time, we need a lot of, because the Roma, they are totally different. You know, in Romania, we have 19 subgroups of Roma. Not all the Roma are the same. What is the new thing in the new Roma strategy is to have a chapter regarding, you know, the culture. And which in this moment, the strategy, the national strategy for Roma from Romania is not connected. We have institutions. We have, I listened to, you know, the intervention of Sabo about, you know, the structural fund project. Guys, the structural fund project is a very good business for the companies to attract money, you know, to make 100-point projects and without Roma. In Romania, and I will give you a short example, I will finish this. We had a call on the FSE Plus for Roma education. And all the Roma NGOs, we applied to have a grant, a small grant, not the millions, around 500 for 3 years. My organization, with a lot of experience, we succeeded to have 97 points. And we are on the waiting list, but not first or second, 27 on the waiting list. But the project is accepted. And I look on the list who received, you know, the finance. A lot of private companies without any experience. And what is tricky in this kind of things, they call us because they saw that we are on the waiting list, and they ask us to be their experts, to work for them. So, I'll finish with this. For my point of view, to have another meetings to discuss about the progress, it's very perfect for our point of view. And this is something good for Roma, because Roma issue is still on the agenda, the European agenda, the national agenda. But we can move forward if we don't listen to each other and we don't involve the Roma civil society in the process of improvement, you know, the strategies. And thank you very much, and congratulate you, because, you know, you put the question, you know, why we need a special treatment in the as a strategy.
I think we took a question actually, and which, if you're reading the ERGO report, that's quite very important findings.
Let's
and
say
that's what I was
you raised, the question.
which is, I think it's a very important finding actually in the report. But first of all, I would like to thank you for your active participation, and you survived. That's deserves an applause. So you very much. Thank you very much, and please feel free to continue the discussion, but outside, not here. Okay? That's for sure. Yeah, but the panel is closed, right? Thank you very much. Gabi,
Yes.
please continue.
Thank you. Yes,
The microphone is not.
it's not working. Okay, doesn't matter for me. So I'm not born educated, but I think I got this leadership position where I also like to speak quite out loud. Okay, it's working again, but doesn't change anything for me. Hello, my name is Gabriela Hrabaneva. I'm the director of the ERGO Network, and I'm taking the space here for a little bit more time. One is mine here, and you can join me here. We will. Hello. Please. And I would just check one more time how it is. Yes. And so this is the closing panel. So thank you for bearing with us. And I would like to ask Elena Ioannou from the permanent representation of the Cyprus to the European Union to start the closing remarks of this closing panel. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I am a social and equality attaché at the permanent representation of Cyprus, so I'm living at the Council of the European Union with all the files related to the subject. So let me start by saying that Cyprus policy is closely aligned with the findings presented today regarding the Roma population. We acknowledge the important progress achieved across Europe, but we also recognize that significant challenges remain. In Cyprus, the Roma community is very small, but our commitment to the objectives of the EU Roma Strategic Framework on equality, inclusion, and participation is unwavering. Our national approach embedded in broader horizontal social policies such as education, social protection, housing, and anti-discrimination, as we mentioned today in our discussion. The National Strategic Framework for Roma Equality, Inclusion, and Participation is implemented through coordinated actions that strengthen mainstream policies and ensure a tailored support wherever specific needs arise. Mentioning about the national contact point for Roma in Cyprus, the role is to coordinate the framework and ensure full alignment with the EU objectives. It involves in a technical committee, and it was mentioned also today that there are some challenges on this role. It's composed by representatives from the relevant ministries and departments, meet regularly to monitor the implementation and guarantee the interministerial and coordination. In accordance with the framework, a comprehensive review takes place every 5 years. The next review is scheduled for 2026, so during our presidency, which starts the 1st of January and ends the 30th of June, with inputs provided by the technical committee. Cyprus remains fully committed to advancing equality, inclusion, and participation for all Roma, and to contributing constructively to the EU collective efforts in this field. Let me tell you a little bit our priorities during our presidency, which are very much aligned to the objectives of the discussions today. So one of the main priorities is strengthening the EU social model. So leaving no one behind remains a guiding principle. Cyprus will prioritize efforts to strengthen the EU social model and advance a forward-looking social agenda. We will support the implementation of the key policies that reinforce social protection, foster inclusion, and address the challenges of the fair twin transition. Advancing the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights is related to our discussion today. It's essential for ensuring a strong and inclusive social Europe. We believe and we will support as a priority the first ever anti-poverty strategy. It will be reaffirming the EU's collective commitment to combat poverty and support the 2030 poverty reduction targets. Our national EU level policies remain human-centered, focusing on strengthening social protection and effective poverty reduction, in line with the goal of the Commission President for the reduction, elimination of poverty in Europe 2050. Cyprus will work decisively to support this long-term objective. An important upcoming strategy is much related to our discussion also today is the expected anti-racist strategy, which we are planning to support and have events around it. Regarding another key priority for Cyprus, which is related, is ensure access to affordable, high-quality, long-term care for older persons and all individuals which are in need of care. We plan to highlight targeted measures and innovative initiatives for the aging population. Active aging for all, community-based services and improved care pathways will be central theme during our presidency. We have a focus on the combating of child poverty as well. So a strong emphasis, initiative to prevent the child poverty and social exclusion. Ensuring the access to services, we will support the reinforcement of the European Child Guarantee, very much related to the Roma population for access to services equally with all the children. Accessible, affordable, and high quality early childhood education and care, it was already mentioned today. It's a very important priority for Cyprus as well. Also, additionally, we will focus on the disability will be prominent priority in our agenda. We underline the importance of the effective implementation and of the strategy and the second phase of the strategy for ensuring the full inclusion of persons with disability. We will work closely with our partners to promote the community-based support and empowerment. We work closely with the civil society and the Roma community in Cyprus and maintain regular contact with the president of the Roma population community in Cyprus. I can assure you today that during our presidency, events will be organized in Cyprus as part of during the Roma Week in April 2026. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have indeed, we are looking forward to the presidency, and I hope that then with the kind of variety of focus that you are having, which is very much, as you say, aligned with our work, they can also find some Roma representation or participation at the event that we will be, of course, very happy to contribute with our expertise as well. Thank you very much for this. Now we have a video that is prepared by a member of the parliament, Nella Diel. She is coming from the group of Greens. And she's also the vice president of the ERGO group, but she's also a member of various committees, for example, the Ample committee and the AFET, and education as well, which is very much connected to today's topic. So if I can ask for playing the video, please. 1 second. In a tick of the clock, you will hear it.
today's conference. I'm very sorry dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you for inviting me to close today's conference. I'm very sorry I couldn't be there myself. My parliamentary obligations prevented me from coming, but I promise you, your voices are being heard. Your voices, the voice of the Romanian community, and also your expertise gathered here sent a clear message. Roma inclusion is not a technical issue. It is a matter of fundamental rights, equality, and also justice. Your reports show that despite strategies and commitments, segregation in education continues. Early childhood education remains out of reach for plenty of Roma children, and discrimination still limits opportunities at every stage of education and also employment. Romani people are consulted more often, but too frequently without the resources or also influence needed to actually shape policies very meaningfully. And yet, we also saw some encouraging examples. Across Spain, Portugal, the Czech Republic, and beyond, inclusive approaches, strong local partnerships, and also community-based supports are producing real results. These success stories remind us that progress is possible when Roma inclusion is taken seriously. At the same time, we must acknowledge that the hard truth, anti-Gypsyism, is the root and cause beyond all of the obstacles that the Romani community is facing in the face of education, housing, or be it also employment. It is systematic unless we actually now address it. And the implementation gap will remain if we don't do anything right now. So let me share two reflections. First, participation of Roma must be meaningful and also resourced. Romani organizations need stable, also long-term support so that it's very about foreseeing the future and that it's actually long-lasting. The next MFF must provide and ensure long-term investment in Roma equality. Secondly, Europe needs Roma accountability. We have clear targets for 2030. Now, we must ensure that monitoring and also reporting back reflect the reality on the ground, not just what is written in some strategies. And allow me to also give a comment from my side as a former teacher, but also as the chair of the Education and Culture Committee, but also as a member of the Committee on Social Rights. So I will work personally with my colleagues to really ensure that we keep investing our maximum efforts in placing anti-Gypsyism very high on our European Parliament's agenda. Together with my colleagues, I will call for better access to early childhood education and also teacher training for inclusion, of course, and for education. As a former teacher myself, and I mentioned it before, I know how crucial early childhood education is and access to education in general. This is a commitment I personally take very seriously because the evidence that you presented today deserves a political follow-up and not just, some kind of political attention. Dear colleagues, today's discussion gives us a clear direction. You have provided the data, the lived realities, and also some solutions. Now it's on us to listen as a parliament and to ensure that this momentum is being taken up by the European Parliament. Thank you for all the work you do, and I promise I'll be there to engage with you further.
So after these inspiring words from the Member of the Parliament, Nela Riel, and also from Elena which joined us from the Cypriot Permanent Representation, and she actually stayed with us all day, so which is very much appreciated, and we very really also honor your commitment to our organization, our event here. We are actually nearing to the end of our time here today at this conference. So, but please know that ERGO Network, we are looking forward, continuing, working together with the European institutions, but also others, all relevant stakeholders, that we want to make sure that Roma rights and inclusions are reality also at the grassroots level. This is particularly important now. It was mentioned to you multiple times today that this new reality that we are living now, which are shaping also the priorities in Europe, we must make sure that the Union of Equality as well as Roma inclusion and the new current strategies will be included alongside these priorities. And we also hope, or we believe, we have to trust in it, that this commitment will have to be reflected in the EU budget and the MFF. And I think that through the work that you see that we do, we really will make sure that at least the advocacy towards that will happen. And of course, then the decision is not us, but I believe that there will be a reflection of it. So we have now reached the end of the policy conference. I hope you stayed until now here, that you found it interesting and important, and that you will be also able to use this information from here today in your further work. And it's not easy task to wrap up this very intense day and the rich discussions in some sort of, encouraging or provocative way. But as you were here, we were having two panels. The first one was focusing on access to quality and inclusive education, where we were presenting our findings from the tireless work of our members. And we were discussing it also with distinguished experts. We must always remember that education is a lifelong learning and a fundamental right for all, and that it is a prerequisite for life and dignity and full participation in society, and it should not be a privilege. I think many of us mentioned actually that the fact that we have as Roma the education, or the others here as well, we mentioned that it's a privilege, but it should not be a privilege only for those few. Second panel, the implementation of the EU Roma Strategic Framework allowed us also to dive deeper into the good practices, but also in the remaining gaps. And we went beyond the European Union. We also look at the implementation in the candidate countries through the Moldova example shared by but last not least, we have showcased our fruitful work with the Council of Europe and on promoting equality and inclusion standards through the new brand Roma Index. So we hope that you will also hear a little bit more about the index in the future. This is something that we really would like to develop further, to access the data on Roma fighting or facing anti-Gypsyism. And importantly, we have reports for both topics, so you find them in the hard copies here on the table, but you can also scan the QR codes either on the sides, but also the more information will be on your small outside. And because we also would like to hear the feedback from you about the content and organization of this event, so please take a moment to complete evaluation of this event. So there is an official link somewhere which needs to be shared, and it's a quick evaluation survey, because this event is also, as our work, it's paid by the European Union, and we have to make sure that we do this evaluation, and we also add the reference to our project. So this is this long number here. So please do so, because this is, and also the activity title, right? So it's a project reference, activity title, follow the website, and please fill the information, because this is also proving that we have actually real people following our work and being with us in this, in kind of sharing this. I want to say something? No. And before we also go any deeper thoughts, maybe let's also have a quick feedback for those who are here in the room. I have a few questions for you here in the room. there will be, after we move from this one, there is also a Slido for those who are watching us online. But just maybe let's check the temperature of what are you taking away. I mean, yeah, the temperature, that's, yeah. I have also that, you know, in this evaluation, you can complain on us. And for sure, we will complain to the hotel. Actually, we are complaining the whole day. So this is something that we asked several times to make sure that the air condition is better. But yeah, please say that if you feel like to do so. But now, how are you feeling at the end of the today? So there will be these few questions. So in the case that you feel very good, maybe you can really like put the things very high. If not, don't want to kind of push your neighbors, but to do in the middle or just keep your hands down. So up is good, down is bad, yes? So how are you feeling at the end of the today? There are a few hands which goes high. Thank you so much for showing your mood. Did you learn anything new? Okay, okay-ish, yes. Do you feel empowered to change something, or even if it's something small? Okay. Okay, thank you so much for being with us here today. I want to thank you all here. I want to thank our speakers, to the moderators, but also to the ERGO Network members and staff, because of course everybody, you took the time to join us here today in Brussels or online, and to make this conference a success. And you will be all receiving the presentations, the reports from the meeting, and also all other follow-up materials very soon. If you want to replay what was happening here today, the links are also available on our social networks, and the YouTube has the full recording on the two parts, first the morning part and afternoon part separately. And thank you all once again for standing up for Roma rights and inclusion today and every day. Have a great rest of the day, and Pre Roma. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.